Hello and welcome everybody. I'm going to be teaching you how to make one of these pumpkin heads with 2 different yarn weights. Finally! These are the 2 yarns I'm using today. The Parfait XL is a jumbo weight yarn, and then the Toucan is going to be a more chunky yarn. Then you'll need a DK or medium weight yarn for the stem, and then you'll need a fingering weight for the eyes. For the jumbo yarn, you're going to need a 12mm hook, or at least that's what I used. And then for the chunky yarn, you're going to need an 8mm hook. I used a 5mm hook for the stem. This hook is actually from Ophire. It is one of their retiring hooks, and it's literally butter. And then I used a 3.5 hook for the eyes. A lot of you ended up preferring this chunky weight yarn, so we're gonna start there. In my pattern, I listed out some other yarns that are the same size. And then this is an ergonomic hook from Ophire. It has an extra pointy tip, which makes it really nice to go between stitches. Oh, and they work great for knife hold or pencil hold. Okay, let's start by making a slip knot loop. I use the X method, which is essentially what you see on the screen. I find it easier. You can also use it as a magic circle, which is why I use it. Now chain 4. Single crochet 1 in the second chain from your hook. I'm single crocheting in the 3rd loop, which is also known as the bump on the back of your chain. Now single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. This will come out to be 3 single crochets total for row 1. Now you need to chain 1, and then you're going to turn your project. Single crochet 2 in the first stitch. Single crochet 1 in the next stitch. Single crochet 2 in that last stitch. Now chain 1 and turn your project. You should now have a total of 5 stitches. Single crochet 1 in each of these stitches. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 2 in the first stitch. Single crochet 1 in the next 3 stitches. In that last stitch, single crochet 2. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Now repeat the last 2 rows until you have a total of 8 rows. The last row you did should equal 11 stitches total. Now go ahead and turn your project, and we're going to start row 9. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. After your last single crochet, chain 1 and turn your project. Then go ahead and repeat this last row until you have a total of 25 rows. Make sure you read the note on the screen for some additional information. Now that you have finished this last row, we are going to go ahead and single crochet the first 2 stitches together. To do that, insert your hook in the first stitch and pull a loop through. Insert your hook in the next stitch and pull a loop through. Then yarn over and pull a loop through all of the loops on your hook. Now single crochet 1 in each stitch until you have 2 stitches left. Now single crochet those last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. You should have 9 stitches in this row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet the first 2 stitches together, then single crochet 1 in each stitch until you have 2 stitches left. Single crochet the last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Now for this last row, you're going to single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row, and don't immediately finish it off. After this last stitch, chain 1. Now before we go on to the next step, you need to make sure you make 4 of these exact same slices to then use later. Again, I used a beautiful Ophire hook and definitely recommend them. Grab that yarn end that's still attached to your yarn ball and keep pulling that yarn until you have a good amount. You're going to then be using this extra yarn to single crochet the slices together. Of course, you aren't going to be doing this till later, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. After I pull that yarn through the last chain we did, I then wrap it up and then we'll just kind of keep it with my slice. Now for the eye slice, you're going to go ahead and repeat those first 8 rows that we did for the solid slice. After row 8, chain 1 and turn your project, then single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Once you finish this last row, you're going to literally repeat the exact same instructions for the next row. So single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. To start the next row, chain 1 and turn your project. Now this is where things get a little bit different. Single crochet 1 in the first 4 stitches. Then single crochet 2 together. Now, instead of continuing this row, you're going to chain 1 and then turn your project. Now single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in the first 3 stitches. Then, once you have 2 stitches left, single crochet those last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in the first 2 stitches. Then in the last 2 stitches, single crochet them both together. Now chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Now chain 1 and we're going to go ahead and start the other side. So I would recommend you grab a new skein of yarn and attach that here, otherwise use the other end of your ball of yarn, whether that's the center or the outside, to then do this next step. So I grabbed yarn from a new skein and then I pulled a chain through that very last stitch at the end of the row opposite to the side we just completed. Then chain 1 and we're going to single crochet in that same stitch again around any yarn ends as well. Make sure for the rest of this row you are single crocheting around this extra yarn end that was from the first chain. Now single crochet 1 in the next 3 stitches. After this last single crochet, you are going to single crochet the next stitch and then the middle stitch together. So that middle stitch you actually already worked into, you're going to be working into it again. And yes, that might seem a little weird, but trust me, it works. Trust the process. Now chain 1 and turn your project. For this next row, you're going to single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Then chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in the first 3 stitches. In the last 2 stitches, single crochet them together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. In the first 2 stitches, single crochet 1. Then in the last 2 stitches, single crochet them together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. And chain 1 and pull that extra yarn through. Now you have completed both sides to your eye space. After the last row you did, cut the yarn leaving only a couple inches. I would say probably no more than 3. Yes, I left way too much there. You'll see why you only need to leave a couple inches. Now that the yarn is pulled through, we can go ahead and start the next row. So going back to side 1, we're going to be working directly into that. So single crochet 1 in the first 3 stitches. Now semi-loosely chain 5. To continue this row, work directly into side 2, place a single crochet in that first stitch, then single crochet 1 in the next 2 stitches. You need a total of 11 stitches for this row. Chain 1. Now before you turn your project, insert your hook into this last single crochet you did and pull that extra yarn through that single crochet stitch because we're going to single crochet over it in the next row. As you can see, this is why I said only leave a couple inches, because I had to cut mine, which is wasting a little bit of yarn. Now we're going to crochet over this, so turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. You need a total of 11 stitches for this row. Make sure to crochet around this yarn end. Now chain 1 and turn your project. For this next row, single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and then repeat this last row until you have a total of 25 rows. Now if you want yours slightly shorter and you only did until 23 rows for the solid slice, only work until you have 23 rows instead of the 25 rows. I did a total of 25, and now we're going to go ahead and start this decreasing section. So single crochet the first 2 stitches together. Then single crochet 1 in each stitch until you have 2 stitches left. Single crochet the last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet the first 2 stitches together. Then single crochet 1 in each stitch until you have 2 stitches left. Single crochet the last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Then chain 1 and leave enough yarn attached to then single crochet your rows together like we did for the solid slice. After you pull this yarn through and then wrap it up like we did for the first slice, I'm going to show you how I wrap my things up to store them because obviously I didn't make these pumpkin heads all in one day. So I just place this yarn ball right on the end on the inside of the slice, and then I just roll it up over it so that it protects those yarn ends and keeps it secure. This is what both completed slices look like. They're about 14.5 inches, maybe like 14.25 inches. Either way, it's a really great size, and as long as it's around there, you are going to be good to go. Now the jumbo weight slices haven't been as popular. I personally prefer them just because they're a lot quicker to crochet. So welcome to those of you who want to make this one. Okay, so with my jumbo parfait yarn and a 12mm hook, I'm making a slip knot loop, and then we're going to go ahead and chain 2 and then single crochet in the second chain from your hook, which should be the slip knot loop as well. Right now we are making a solid slice for your pumpkin head. I would also recommend tightening this loop if you use the same method that I did, and you can tighten it. Now chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 3 in this single crochet. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 2 in the first stitch. Single crochet 1, single crochet 2 in the last stitch, chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 2 in the first stitch. Single crochet 1 in the next 3 stitches. In the last stitch, single crochet 2. This should be a total of 7 single crochets. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Now repeat this last row until you have 17 rows. Please read the note on the screen for additional information. For this next row, single crochet the first 2 stitches together. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until there's 2 stitches left. Single crochet the last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Now for this last row, you should have a total of 5 stitches once you complete it. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. For all you cat lovers, here's some purring. Chain 1. And then before you finish your project, make sure you end with 5 stitches in this last row. Now that this row is finished, we are going to actually pull a lot of extra yarn to single crochet our slices together. So once we leave enough yarn, I would say a couple feet, you can pull that through the last chain you did. And then we're going to wrap it up and just keep it there for later. Now, I don't have an example of me wrapping it up here, but if you'd like to see an example, I did do that for the smaller weight yarn version of this pumpkin head. Now we're going to start the eye slice in this yarn. So you're going to repeat the first 6 rows that you did for the solid slice for this eye slice. So now chain 1 and turn your project. And then for row 7, you're going to single crochet in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Now to begin making the eye hole, we need to single crochet 1 in the first 2 stitches. Single crochet the next 2 stitches together. One of those stitches is the middle stitch, which is important for us to note for later. Now chain 1 and turn your project. And yes, that might seem weird, but you have to trust the process. Now single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. This should be 3 stitches. Chain 1 and turn your project. As you can see, we're starting to create the shape for the triangle eye space. Single crochet 1 in the first stitch. Now single crochet the last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each of these stitches. Chain 1. Now we finished side 1, I would recommend grabbing a new skein for side 2, or using the other end of your ball of yarn that you've already been using. I am a center puller, so I grab from the center of this new skein and then we are going to attach it. So grab that new yarn and then pull a loop through that stitch on the opposite end from side 1. Now chain 1 and single crochet back in that same stitch around any yarn ends you may have. Single crochet 1 in the next stitch. and then single crochet the next stitch and the middle stitch together. Yes, we already worked in that middle stitch, which is why we're working in it again to create the top of the triangle. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in that first stitch. Now single crochet the last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. Single crochet 1 in each stitch. Chain 1. Now that we finished side 2, you can cut leaving only a couple inches, I'd say no more than 3. Now pull that yarn end through the last chain you did. Now tighten that loop, and now we're going to go ahead back to side 1 and continue our project. Single crochet 1 in the first 2 stitches. Now loosely chain 3. Chain a little bit looser than me too. Now single crochet 1 in both of the stitches of side 2. Chain 1, and now before we start this next row, insert your hook into the last stitch you did and pull that extra yarn end through because we're going to crochet over it in the next row. Now this is why I told you to only leave a couple inches. Mine is clearly too long, so we're going to cut it so it's only about 3 inches long. Now we can turn your project and start the next row. Single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Make sure to single crochet around that yarn end like I mentioned before. You should have a total of 7 stitches in this row. Chain 1, and then for the next row you're going to single crochet 1 in each stitch and repeat that same row until you have a total of 17 rows. Unless you decided 17 rows was too many, so you did 16 rows for your solid slice, you need to do 16 rows for your eye slice as well. Now for the second to last row, single crochet the first 2 stitches together. Then single crochet 1 in each stitch until there's 2 stitches left. Single crochet those last 2 stitches together. Chain 1 and turn your project. In this last row, single crochet 1 in each stitch until the end of the row. Similarly to the solid slice, instead of finishing it off with only a couple inches of yarn and then weaving that in, you need to have a bunch of extra yarn because you're going to use that later to single crochet your slices together. So make sure you have a couple feet left over and still attached. Now you know how to do both slices in the jumbo yarn. Obviously these aren't the same slices you just worked on, but I wanted to show you a visual of about the measurements. They should be about 14.5 inches, maybe slightly smaller, maybe around there, but you want to aim for as close as possible to that measurement. And now for the mesh eyes. These are very repetitive, so I think you guys will catch on pretty quickly. Please read the note on the screen before beginning. Now for the purpose of this tutorial, I will be using yellow yarn for these mesh eyes, but in all reality, I only use the black eyes for my actual pumpkin heads. You can use whatever color you want, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys could see very clearly how to do these eyes. Now let's start with the slip knot loop. I'm using a 3.5mm Ophire hook. This is one of their wooden hooks, and they actually have a lot of smaller sizes in their wooden hooks if you're interested. Now you need to chain 19. Double crochet in the 5th chain from your hook. I double crochet in the 3rd loop of the chain, which is the back bump of the chain. I will say something about this hook is it's extra pointy. I feel like a lot of hooks have a dull point and it's really hard to get in these small stitches like so. I would highly recommend looking into one of these. Now chain 1 and skip 1 chain and then double crochet in the next chain. So keep repeating that until the end of the row. Chain 1, skip 1 chain, double crochet in the next chain. Now this last double crochet should go in that slip knot loop. So chain 3, and turn your project. Skip the first double crochet in the first chain, and then double crochet in that next double crochet. Now chain 1, skip the chain, and double crochet in the double crochet. You will only ever double crochet in a double crochet. Now keep repeating this until the end of the row. After you place a double crochet in that very last double crochet, chain 1, skip 1 chain, and then double crochet in that next chain. Now chain 3 and turn your project. The next row you are just going to be repeating multiple times. Again, skip the first double crochet in the first chain and then double crochet in the next double crochet. Chain 1, skip the chain, double crochet in the next double crochet, and keep repeating that until you have 1 double crochet left. Instead of working in this last double crochet, you're going to skip that, skip the next chain, and then double crochet in that next chain. Now repeat this last row until you have a total of 7 rows. The very last row should only have 3 boxes. Keep watching if you like visually seeing all of these next rows. Great, now we have finished the last row. If you want to, you can do one row. It's really all your preference. So as you can see, the yellow and the black are literally the exact same size and everything. So an eye should come out to about 3.25 inches. Now I'm going to show you what it should look like on your slice. So grab your mesh eye and lay it on. I recommend whenever you're sewing it to stretch it out as much as you can so that visibility is even better. So here's an example of what I mean by sewing it. And you can sew it on the inside so you don't actually see your yarn through the other side. So if you do it a very specific way through your stitches instead of through the panel, then you can sew it together and you won't even see that you sewed it on. It'll literally look like it's just stuck to the back of it. Also, this is purely just to show you what I mean by through the stitches instead of through the panel. As you can see, it's more of like a sideways motion instead of a front and back when you're sewing. My example is also really close to the eye space, and I would recommend stretching your eye out and then sewing it a couple stitches away from the eye space so that you have max visibility and comfortability. I learned that after literally making these 5 times and realizing that I definitely should have stretched my eyes out a little bit more. After I sew through a couple more stitches, I'm going to turn it around so you guys can see what I mean by you literally can't see that I sewed it to the slice. Okay, so now as you can see, you can't see the yarn that I used to sew the mesh eye to the space here. So it literally just looks like it's kind of hanging out, which is ideally what you want. Unless you want a stitched look, that's totally okay too. It may even look cooler and scarier. And now for the fun part where you get to see it come to life, seaming the slices. So this is what it looks like from the inside. As you can see, it's way more rich. And then I'm just gonna slide this over real quick to show you guys why we had to pull all of that extra yarn. So as you can see, that yarn is attached at the end because that's the end that we're gonna start at to attach it to the other slice. But before we get going, I just wanna bring this up. If you guys want some more structure with yours, you can actually put some like thicker wiring in between your slices and crochet around it. Now this can be something you add later if you're not sure you want that yet, because I added mine later as if I was literally just weaving in an end that was metal instead of yarn. So this is definitely an option. I don't think it's necessary, especially if you do some like clear elastic at the bottom, which I will be showing you at the very end. So anyway, this is an option for you. As you can see, it makes it very bendable and easy to shape. Okay, so with your panels, you need to stack them on top of each other in a way to where that all of the edges or all of the single crochet sides are going to be on the inside or the same side. You don't want them to be on opposite sides. At the very end of one of your slices, insert your hook into that last stitch and then insert it into the first stitch of the last row of a different slice. Pull a chain through both of these stitches and then chain 1. Now you're going to single crochet back through everything you just pulled chains through. Now in each row of both slices, you need to single crochet 1 on the sides. So that means you need to go through both slices and you should have a total of 19 single crochets across the sides of the jumbo yarn slices. And then you should have a total of 30 single crochets on the sides of the chunky yarn. So for every row, there should be 1 single crochet going through the first slice and in through the second slice. You can keep watching for what I'm doing. Now that we've single crocheted these slices together, chain one, and then you can pull that yarn end through. Once you pull that yarn end through, this is what it should look like. Now you can take these yarn ends and you can actually knot them together to secure them up at the top. Now that we've knotted them, we can actually weave them into this single crochet row. So I just cut those yarn ends to match the same size, and I'm going to put them through my needle, and then we're just going to weave that in the single crochet row. Cut those excess yarn ends, and then you are all good to go. Just keep repeating this process to add more slices. Now all that's left are the eye slices. As you can see, this is what the outside looks like. So for the eye slices, you want to make sure that the side with all of the sewing is on the inside, especially if you use my technique where it's hidden in the stitches. See, it literally looks like the eyes are just floating there. Another thing you can do to keep the shape of the eyes is actually get some of that metal and then fold them into triangles and place them in the eyes and then use some thread to sew them in place. So I'm going to kind of show you what a visual of that looks like. I haven't sewed mine in yet, but I wanted to show you what it looked like all stretched out and having the metal piece there. I definitely think it helps with the shaping with the eyes because sometimes I've noticed mine can look a little wonky. It also helps spread the mesh out so that you can see through them even better. Okay, so now that we have all of these slices together, there should be a total of 6. We can fold this so that the inside is actually facing the outside so we can sew these last 2 slices together. So we're going to be using the same process that we were using before, where we start at that bottom edge and then sew up to the top. Now that we have completed this last one, we can knot those ends together, except don't cut them or weave them in or anything like that. Just leave them be because we're going to use these to close up the top. So now that we have the inside out, we need to flip it the right way. So go ahead and flip that back so that the right side is on the outside now. Great, now that we have that, we can go back up to the top and we can get this closed up and ready for the stem. We are going to grab one of these yarn ends and then we are going to weave it through the top here all the way around. And then we're going to knot it to the other strand. So let's go ahead and use one strand and just weave it all around the top at the edges here. Now that we've made our way back around, we can go ahead and pull this other strand to tighten up the top, and then we can use that other strand that's left over to knot them together. Now just weave these back in. I just weaved it back in around the top that we originally sewed through, and then it's good to go. Now your pumpkin head is literally almost complete, just one more step. Now all that's left is the literal quickest part of this, which is the stem. So I'm using a 5mm Ophire hook. This is the one that I love that feels like butter. And then my medium weight yarn. So let's go ahead and make a slip knot loop or a magic ring. My slip knot loop doubles as a magic ring. Chain 3 and double crochet 14 into the magic ring or slip knot loop, whatever you did. And then after you double crochet those 14, close the circle by pulling the end of the yarn coming from the center. Now slip stitch in that second chain that's right before your first double crochet. Pull that pretty tightly and then chain 2. Now this chain is going to count as a stitch. Single crochet 1 in each of those double crochet stitches until you reach the beginning. Now that we're back at the beginning, you need to slip stitch in that second chain. Now pull it tightly and chain 2. Repeat this last row until you have your desired amount. I did a total of 7 rows. After doing that first row of single crochets, as you could see, I had to flip it kind of inside out so that I could actually be crocheting it properly as I added more rows. Now continue adding rows until you have at least 7 or 8 rows, if not more. Here is my finished stem, and now we need to make sure that this is going to be sturdy for us and keep its nice shape. But before we do that, let's make sure we have enough yarn to sew to the pumpkin. So after you did your last row, you needed to chain 1 and then pull enough yarn through to use to sew. This is all the yarn we're using to sew our stem to our pumpkin head. Now to secure the yarn end in the center of the stem that we originally started with, we are just going to knot this yarn end to a piece of yarn that's a part of the stem. So I just created a little slip knot loop on that, and now we're just going to cut it and just leave it in the middle. So flip that back right side, and now we need to make a little insert to make sure that this stem is nice and good for us. You can fill it with polyfill, or you can do my little cardboard trick, where you take a little piece of cardboard that's the same length and width as your stem, just to keep your stem sturdy. Then take a little piece of tape and tape it together to create that rounded shape, and then we're going to insert it inside of our stem. Great, now we can sew it to the top of our pumpkin head. So go ahead and grab your pumpkin head, and then we're gonna place this nice little stem directly on the center at the very top. Then just insert your needle at the top there, pull it through, and then go like a little bit over, maybe a couple centimeters over. Insert your needle back through the top of the pumpkin and then in through the first stitch of your stem. Now pull that needle through, then insert your needle into the next single crochet stitch and then back into your pumpkin. And you're going to be repeating this process all the way around until your stem is attached. Then, of course, you can knot this yarn strand to the inside of your pumpkin and then weave in your end, and your pumpkin head is finished. Congrats, you guys, you finished your pumpkin head, but we are not done because, of course, I have one other thing to show you. So if you want, you can use some of this like clear elastic string that you use for like jewelry, and you can make a slip knot loop and then basically do a lot of slip stitches here at the bottom from like the inside of your pumpkin head at the very bottom here to then make this like stretchy elastic band at the bottom. So I'm just going to kind of show you a little visual here so you can see what I'm doing. And now we're all done. I'm so excited that I could finally do this tutorial. I am not kidding you, it is 3 AM when I'm finishing this. So anyway, thank you guys so much for your support. I hope you love your pumpkin heads. Be sure to tag me so I can see yours. Your like and subscribe would mean the world. Love you.